Hey everybody and welcome to this Disventure Camp review. My name is Silly Billy, but you can call me Billy. Disventure Camp is officially over, and with rumors of the new season airing in May, I feel like now is a great time to both look back at the crazy story we've had, as well as look into the future for what we as fans want and also don't want to see make a return. Keeping the theme of the cowboy movies from the one Disventure Camp episode named after one, this review is going to be split up into 3 separate parts, starting with what made Disventure Camp special and then going into what held it back. As for the final section, well, you read the title. Real quick before we start, note that this video is meant as constructive criticism. I have no intention of either bashing down Odd Nations, nor of uncontrolled praising. In this video I'm just going to share my thoughts, with the goal that future shows and production studios, not just Odd Nation cartoons, can learn from this going forward. Also because it's fun. Also note there will be a lot of comparisons to Total Drama, see it as a compliment. And then finally, please consider subscribing to the Silly Billy channel if you want to see more of this type of content. I have a lot more other Disventure Camp videos, and you can check those out by going into the little eye at the corner, somewhere right here. There it is, I found it. Yeah, so check that and let's begin. Wap, wap, wap. Let me start by praising what I believe made Disventure Camp a great show. I usually am not really that into a lot of fan-made projects. It's not because they're not fun, it's just that they don't really capture my attention. Mostly because the stories that these shows tell are either really bland fanfictions or have little to no visual aid to accompany their stories. I'm sorry, that's not an insult to people making fanfictions, I just want a certain level of quality in my productions. I was still really surprised then when I was recommended to watch the show back when there was only 2 episodes. I was thoroughly invested in the show. It managed to immediately grab my attention as the season promised a lot of interesting standout characters with a fun overarching story and of course with stellar animation. To this day I find the animation quality of Disventure Camp its biggest strength, and that has only improved over the year that they have been shooting. With the limited time and resources they have to their disposal, it is a miracle that they are able to make these high quality animations, which feels so familiar to the Total Drama style. In fact, the quality was similar enough for Fresh TV to issue a cease and desist because they were afraid that other people might confuse the 2 seasons. Annoying as the whole ordeal was, that is actually a really big compliment too. But the animation quality is not the only thing that the show does right. I already briefly mentioned this, but the cast of characters shows great potential from their initial reveal. From the first time I got to meet this cast, there were only 2 characters I wasn't initially a big fan of, being Tess and Hunter. And the reason for that is because I was afraid that these 2 characters would be yet another carbon copy of Total Drama's Gwen and Duncan. This is a pitfall that many fanfictions I've seen fall into. They like a particular character from the original show, want to have it in their own work, so they design a new but nearly identical character for themselves, but then absolutely fail at adapting all that makes these 2 characters enjoyable and rootable. I was relieved then when it seemed that they wanted to go their own direction with the goth character, and especially with the Duncan-like player character, who turned out a lot nicer and less brutish than his Total Drama counterpart. Speaking of which, I feel like the other characters all bring something uniquely their own to Disventure Camp, which the original Total Drama hasn't really delved into just yet. An actress looking for her big break, 2 influencers, mind you that Disventure Camp released before the Total Drama reboot, a character struggling with her strict parents, again Disventure Camp was first, and a gay romance. Wait a minute, is the Total Drama reboot a ripoff of Disventure Camp? Jokes aside, the characters are pretty diverse, and the ones who aren't wholly original, such as Ali as another gamer character and Kai as another aura-sensing hippie type, all do something distinctly different to set them apart from their Total Drama counterparts. Another thing I greatly appreciate about the cast of characters is how well they are utilized. I absolutely adore it when an early boot character gets to reappear later to showcase a little more of their potential. Take for example Dakota, who is an absolutely great character, and most of what makes her fun happens during the period where she isn't even an actual contestant. So how does Disventure Camp deal with its eliminated characters? Let's see here. First Boot Oliver plays a major role as Crystal's intern throughout most of the season. Carol gets to come back as a twist villain halfway through. Kai and Maggie make frequent appearances when they're in the woods. I believe the first eliminated contestant to not feature again until the finale is Yule, and he goes home 6th! As such, I feel like I really know these characters, including the early boots, and it makes the prospect of seeing them reappear in the planned All-Star season really exciting. I'm not equally fond of all the characters, more on that once we get to the second part of this review, but I want to go over some of the characters and story arcs that I was quite fond of in the show. Starting with our main couple, James and Aiden, I had an absolute blast with these 2. James especially highlights a lot of different sides to his personality that make for a very interesting character. He stands out as a manipulative schemer, but then slowly develops feelings for Aiden, which are also the moments at which he shows more of his vulnerable and personal side. Him not showing up to the final 5 challenge just because he heard Aiden was actually a pretty powerful moment, considering how we'd come to know him so far. Aiden himself had a tendency to be a tad more bland from time to time, being easily the main character of the show who got fooled by the schemes of the other characters. But despite his naivety, Aiden is still really enjoyable, and seeing him grow closer to James with each passing episode was really cute. Lake is definitely the most interesting character out of this whole season, which is ironic because I placed her last on my initial ranking for not having a story yet. I still stand behind that, by the way. It takes a while for Lake's story to get going, but once it finally picks up some steam, seeing Lake reject the voice of her parents and listen more to who she wants to be is a great twist. When she got to stay after her fake out elimination, I really started to root for this character. It's unfortunate that the character was dropped so soon. I think with a different direction, this character could have been a great main protagonist, or even a fun twist villain. Like Evil in the All-Star season, we can still do it. Well, at least it saves me the trouble of making a dedicated Lake video. While I'm not really the biggest fan of Tess in this show, there were a couple of scenes that were really powerful towards the beginning of the season. Also, I was very vocal about her dumb elimination, but at least I can kind of appreciate that she got to take her moment before going down. That's more than I can say for other characters in the merge. I already touched on how well the early boot characters are utilized in the show, but of those, I really liked Oliver. Yul was great to hate, and Connor was just incredibly goofy. And I guess Carol was alright too. And to round out the cast of characters, we get a fantastic trio of hosts in Crystal, Marcus, and my absolute favorite, Nina. I enjoyed every moment with Nina on screen. She got to steal the spotlight time and time again, and when they confirmed that it was actually Nina herself and not Marcus being the ventriloquist, I absolutely lost it. Also, I'm still convinced that Nina is the spawn of Satan, and I hope that we get to see more of her in the next season. Ooh, maybe she can take away the eliminated characters with the Hell Gondola of losers. To quickly summarize, this Venture Camp was mostly great because of its potential. Potential in the animation department, potential in the cast of characters, and the ease of getting invested in the first few episodes. But with that out of the way, I think it's time to take a more critical look at the show. Wap, wap, wap. For as much as I enjoyed covering this Venture Camp, there are certainly some aspects I would have liked to see different. Or maybe not at all. Writing this, I find it hard to start at one specific example, because it's all about the same severity. So whereas I ended the last section on the summary, in this section I will place the summary at the beginning. In my opinion, this Venture Camp's biggest flaw lies in poorly utilizing the potential that made it so good in the first place. And I think we can split up this flaw into two main issues. The first of these issues is underdevelopment. Some of the interesting storylines set up at the beginning of the show are unfortunately dropped silently and without a great payoff. This is especially true for the mergers. After all, dropping out with your story only halfway resolved is kind of a characteristic for the pre-merge, so I'm not going to count those guys. But for the mergers, it's a different story. And the biggest offender in this category has to be Lake. Once Lake's story finally kicks off, it is hard not to get invested in her story of self-discovery. When she gets fake eliminated, it looks like Lake is gearing up for the second part of her story, but nope. 1 or 2 episodes later, it's bye-bye Lake, leaving on a narratively low point. In-universe, her elimination makes a lot of sense, more on that later, but let's not pretend that they couldn't have written a situation where Rosa or maybe even Rhea got booted instead. In a scripted story like this, narrative satisfaction should always get priority over the logic of the eliminations. Another great example of wasted potential is when Carol gets to return halfway through the show. After Yul's elimination and James's slow return towards the light side, the season is really missing an antagonistic force. Enter Carol, who finds her way back into the show by literally being the main thread of the episode she returns in. Carol's goals are very clearly laid out. Get Aiden and James out as quickly as possible for getting her booted out in the first place. She's shown to have some great strategic insight as well, providing Hunter and Allie with immunity so the Alliance of 5 has to vote out one of their own members. From how she acts to even how she talks, Carol gives off all the signs that she'll be the main villain from here on out. Or well, at least for the one more episode that she gets to be on. After which Oliver breaks her leg, and her pet spider dies, and she's sedated and dragged off. Bye. And what I dislike about this even more is that after this episode, Carol has an even bigger justification for hating Aiden and James. As much as it makes sense to side with James and Aiden here, Carol is rightfully pissed with how James fabricated a lie to get her booted off in episode 2, and with how Aiden betrayed her trust of the spider by using it to catch Oliver off guard, causing that poor spider to die. Say all you want about Carol being foolish enough to trust Aiden with a spider, but at the end of the day, he did misuse that trust and acts as if he has nothing to blame.
I'm only human after all. I'm only human after all. Don't put the blame on me.
as such, her remark,
Why do those always get away with it?
as a response to James winning both the money and the love, is totally justified. You see a Scooby-Doo villain, I see a broken woman genuinely upset that the people who wronged her are now celebrated as the victors. We are not the same. There's also some smaller issues that fall into this category. Ellie gets to do precisely nothing over the course of several episodes, basically just awaiting elimination until it doesn't make sense to eliminate anybody else. You could argue the same for Hunter, although at least he gets to interact a little more with other contestants once both of his girls are gone. And lastly, a pet peeve of mine that I found particularly annoying is that Nina straight up dies in episode 11, and it's left on a cliffhanger with what will happen to her, only for her to be fine in the next episode. Like, what? How did she survive? I mean, I already believe that this doll is unkillable hellspawn, but at least show me what happened. On the other side of that, the second big issue is rushed development. Some of these characters do get the development that their story would require, but it is crammed in too little time, causing it to feel rushed or making it seem out of nowhere. On paper, you got all the elements to make for a great character, but in execution, it just doesn't show properly. One of the big contenders for this place is Rosa Maria. On paper, this character sounds really interesting. She's a single-team mom who has done some things in the past that she regrets, but always with the intent of keeping her children safe. She always sticks her neck out for others in the hope that they will do the same. She's sweet, caring, and supportive. In reality, this is spread very thinly throughout the story. And with the exception of her being sweet, all of the things I just mentioned can be derived because she literally tells me!
I will help her, support her, and respect her every decision.
Rosa's goal in the story is to be a support character. Or well, that is what she ends up being anyways. Rosa's constantly in service of other storylines in the show. First Maggie, then Lake, then Rhea, and in the end even James. But as a result, Rosa never really gets to take the spotlight herself. Yet the story tends to pretend as if she does, and we do get some more insight into her character. For example, when James opens the conversation in the finale, so it makes sense for him to share his winnings. Or when Crystal was randomly giving us information about the characters. Oh, or how about the webcomic, specifically designed to give Rose a little more backstory because the main show doesn't care to spend time on her. Listen, if I need to do additional research to understand a character, then your character writing is flawed. Same goes for Maggie, who gets most of her development in one episode. Or no, wait, that's actually not true. No, Maggie's character stays largely unaltered until her epic rock, paper, scissors loss, where she punches you in the face. After that, she is picked up by Kai to go into the forest, and her journey of self-discovery happens off-screen! What? Connor is also an interesting case to mention here because the resolution to his story happens within the span of one episode. For him, it's a little more excusable because he only gets to play in the first 3, but I still find it really odd that all it takes to get Connor out of what is essentially a midlife crisis is a chat with Rhea and a chat with Kai. Overall, the story has a tendency to rush through development by blowing up events like they are very big happenings, yet to the audience they come over as a lot more subtle and irrelevant. The result is that technically the story of these characters is ready to be wrapped up, while I'm just starting to adjust to who these people are. And nowhere is this more prevalent than with her.
Wap, 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 wap.
It's time to address the giant elephant in the room that is Rhea. This character infuriates me beyond belief. Rhea is a great example of both of the two issues I highlighted in the previous segment. Her story goes undeveloped for a large part of the show, only to rush development on her evil arc in the last few episodes. And again, if you look back, it's technically all there. In fact, I was pointed this out by none other than Odd Nations themselves, who left a comment explaining how they foreshadowed the Rhea twist from a couple of episodes prior. And credit where credit is due, watching it back with her future twist in mind, I can really see it developing throughout the episodes. But watching it first time, you don't get that privilege. Obviously, the goal of telling a story is not that you need to be told beforehand where it's going in order to pick up on its subtleties, right? Rhea's last few episodes all center around the idea of subverting expectations. We have this character who feels alone and like she doesn't belong throughout most of the season, who suddenly decides that the only way for her to succeed is to take matters into her own hands and rule the game regardless of what people think of her. Rhea concocts a very clever and very devious plan of stealing the immunity idol along with some other things, blaming it on who was holding it at the time, exposing the secret tension between the main couple, make sure everybody thoroughly hates you so you can guarantee all votes are on you, then use the idol and make sure that the only real threat you have left is the one going home because of it. Absolutely genius move. I cannot credit that enough. And this entire plan is riddled with plot twists and shocks. Rosa used the idol, but it's stolen. Turns out Rhea was the thief. So Rosa goes home because her friend set her up. Then she exposes James. Then she uses the totem to get rid of all her votes. Then she eliminates Hunter with her soul phone instead of James. And the plan continues flawlessly up until it finally blows up in her face at a point where scheming alone isn't enough to win her the game. And she realizes it might have been handy if she held a couple of allies behind. When people are praising Rhea as a character, I assume that this is the Rhea that they are referring to. A stone-cold villain with a great plan who destroys everyone in her path. But the big problem with Rhea though? None of this makes sense with what we know of her. Rhea is a deeply troubled character trying to make some friends and find out where she belongs. During her first few episodes, Rhea slowly opens up to the one person who seems to really care for her presence, Connor. The two are able to bond a little until Connor selflessly sacrifices himself in a double elimination to prevent Rhea from going home, boosted by his newfound appreciation of his older age and sensing that Rhea needs to win way more than he does. As a result, Rhea is alone again. And when the opportunity arises for her to make a team swap, Rhea purposefully selects the one camper who is known for being supportive towards others. Rhea wants so desperately to be liked, to find her place in the season. Now compare this to the iconic queen that we got in the last 4 episodes, and the difference is big and quick enough to give anybody watching it a whiplash. The Rhea from the start of the season and the Rhea from the end of the season are two entirely different characters. And that isn't attributed to Rhea going through a strong and meaningful arc throughout the season. Rather because there was a clear starting point and a clear finish line and just one big pacing mess in the middle of it. Rhea stays on the background as the odd one out for far too long, only to majorly course correct over the span of 1 episode. No, actually 1 scene of an episode. To continue being the main antagonistic force of this season in a comedically over-the-top supervillain-like way. Rhea's search for fitting in is replaced for her search for fame and her breakthrough in Hollywood, which, by the way, never corresponds to any villainous activities that she undertakes throughout this season. Rhea's distaste for not playing nice is replaced by an actually evil personality who literally leaves a guy to fall from a cliff after nudging him slowly towards the edge. Rhea ditches her closest friend, the one thing Rhea was truly desperate to find as the episodes passed on, and trades her in for an immunity idol. The Rhea we are meant to feel sorry for and this evil son of a gun smirking in literally every scene she is in are not the same characters. Nope. And mind you, I'm not saying that a change this drastic is impossible. I mean, the Star Wars prequels show the gradual evolution from Anakin Skywalker starting as this cute, innocent boy to literally one of the scariest people in the galaxy. Gradual being the key word here. With Anakin, we are shown that his beliefs in the Jedi and the light side are crumbled piece by piece as he slowly descends into darkness under the influence of Palpatine. With Rhea, however, it feels like we're watching cute, innocent boy Anakin for 2 whole movies, and then we start off the 3rd movie with the scene where he murders the younglings. But we don't need to go across the galaxy for an example of how to have a good character do evil things. You want a good example of how to do Rhea right? Take a look at Rhea! Or rather, Rhea in episode 8. Episode 8, for those who don't immediately remember an episode based on a number, is the episode where they are all hunted down by Carol. It's not necessarily the challenge itself where Rhea gets to shine, but rather it's what happens before and especially what happens after. Now that they're merged, Rosa and Lake are able to work together again, and they join Rhea in an alliance of 3. It's exactly what Rhea wants, right? But Rhea has her doubts. Doubts that her friendship with Rosa is as tight as Rosa makes it seem. Doubts that Rosa's friendship with Lake isn't stronger. Doubts that Rhea might end up third wheeling until Lake and Rosa decide to get rid of her. And then, Rosa reveals that she found an immunity idol. A highly secret detail to share only with the ones you trust most. But it bothers Rhea. But why would she reveal this now? The two of them have been looking for it together, but now is when she decides to tell it? Why didn't she tell it when she found it? Rosa, as the ever-supportive friend that she is, decides to use this to keep their alliance of 3 safe. If anyone feels like one of them may be in hot water, just give Rosa a sign and she'll use it in a heartbeat. If they play their cards properly, it could be enough to ensure them a place in the final 3 together. But what then? What happens when Rhea is in the final 3 with Lake and Rosa and there's nobody left to vote for? Rhea's insecurities rise up again. Rosa probably doesn't like her as much as she likes Lake. Maybe she never even liked her in the first place. Maybe it's Lake's fault. Did she say something? Was any of this real? Was it just in her head? But then why wait for Lake to reveal the totem? It just doesn't make any sense. And then Rhea overhears a plan. Lake is being targeted. She knows what to do. Run over to Rosa, warn her about the totem, and then use the opportunity to boot off a strong competitor. But a thought pops up. What if she just didn't say anything? Nobody knows Rhea caught on to the conversation. None would be the wiser if she just kept her mouth shut. Not only could Rosa keep the totem around for another episode, but it would solve all her doubts about Lake and Rosa's friendship for good. No more Lake means that Rosa doesn't have to choose between her and Rhea. She doesn't get to choose. Rhea could just make the choice for her and nobody would ever know. But could she do it? Would she really sink as low as the people she's been criticizing? Would she betray her friendship with Lake just to secure the one that she has with Rosa? That night, Crystal asks if anybody wants to play their immunity idol. And Rosa stays silent. This episode is the absolute highlight of Rhea's story. The character's so desperate for making some friends, now betraying them because of that same desperation. We as the audience are brought in this journey of doubt, insecurities, and betrayal. This is, in my opinion, a perfect way to tackle such a story. Which is why Rhea betraying Rosa only 2 episodes later is the absolute worst thing that could have come from this character. The setup is very similar. Rhea betrays one of her friends, but this time it's not to comfort any insatiable insecurities, but it's to gain a little more safety in the game. Safety she already had because Rosa would have used the totem on Rhea anyway. But that isn't even the biggest mistake that they make with this character. No, that honorary title goes to the lack of remorse Rhea has after all of it. After eliminating Lake, Rhea is devastated. She is guilt-ridden and the elimination haunts her for most of the episode after. During episode 9, Rhea can't even begin to comprehend what awful things people do just to stay on the show.
Everyone plays dirty and gets what they want. Is that the only way to get far in this game?
And an episode later, Rhea's not only betraying, but straight up framing her best friend just to gain the upper hand for another episode. Rhea does show guilt here and there, but every time she does, it is undermined by another evil grimace. And whereas the last time she caused one of her friends to get eliminated, it left her scarred, now it does very little for her, up until when it comes back around to harass her in the finale. When Rhea started apologizing to Rosa, I burst out laughing because I didn't believe any of it. Rhea's a simple case of not being sorry for what you did, but being sorry that you got caught. Seeing Rhea arrive at the finish line while she lost everything invoked the exact same reaction of laughing my ass off, because every shred of sympathy I had for this character had been completely obliterated by her out-of-character behavior from the past couple of episodes. Truly a textbook definition of character derailment. As such, you can imagine my surprise when I saw that people were actually praising Rhea's evil twist. Like, genuinely, I did not understand what was happening. Anytime I tried to prove to myself that somehow I wasn't in the wrong in this one, the majority showed up to indeed think Rhea's twist made her one of the best characters of the season. Surely I was missing something, but what? Why did it feel like me and only a handful of other server members were bashing on this god-awful twist with a gigantic horde of Rhea stands surrounding us like the Silly Billy Duck Bond was ground zero for the new Walking Dead spin-off series, Rhea, Rise of the Ice Queen? In fact, a little while ago, I challenged the Rhea fans to describe to me what it was about Rhea that made her so good, with a bonus criteria that they had to avoid these brain-dead words in response. I want to say a quick thank you to everybody who took the time to respond to that. Why I don't really have the time to cover all of your comments here, rest assured that I read most, if not all of them. There was, however, one review that really sprung out to me, and judging by that it had the most upvotes in the comment section, I think many of the Rhea fans agree with this statement. So thank you, CodySim, for your lengthy description of Rhea. I'll leave it on the screen for this section for you to read, just feel free to pause the video. And after reading this, I think the main takeaway is that we kind of agree. The story that they are trying to tell with Rhea is a really powerful one of corruption, fame, and greed. It shows the changings of a nice person and what they would do for a chance at the spotlight, the values that they give up just for a chance to have their 15 minutes of fame, and how it ultimately gets you nowhere when these actions are shown to the anonymous entertainment hive mind that you are trying to please. Even if Rhea wins, she would still be alone. There's just one big problem. Rhea is completely the wrong person to tell this story with. Had this been her entire story from start to finish, then the Rhea arc would probably have been the most thought-provoking of them all. But with its current state of waiting for 8 whole episodes to show any severe selfish actions from Rhea, to rushing it so that she is betraying her friend 2 episodes later, it is both too little too late and also too much too soon. If this would have been spread out more evenly, the change could have been extremely good. One very simple twist to make this already more effective is to not show any remorse from Rhea after betraying Lake. Instead, show that Rhea is experiencing a sense of rush, of excitement. She just did that. She got one of the most powerful players of the game eliminated. Had she been going about this game all wrong? What more could she do? Instead, now we have one flimsy talk from Carol of all people, who specifically targets Rhea because she is trying so hard to fit in.
It's not being so difficult to convince Rhea. She apparently has been insecure with her position here since she arrived. That can play in my favor.
The twist just does not make sense from Rhea's perspective. Or at least, not from the Rhea that we've come to know. Ultimately, I think that we can agree that this is a very interesting appeal for a story, but in my opinion, it was just way too rushed and there wasn't anything to really get attached to. And I think that sentiment quite nicely wraps up how I feel about Disventure Camp as a whole too. The premise of this season, from the cast to the art style, all show a lot of creativity and potential, but then when it comes to the execution, it just leaves a lot to be desired, unfortunately. Ultimately, I like the show, but I think there's a lot to improve for future seasons going forward. And let me reiterate that this is not just to bash on Odd Nation Cartoons or Disventure Camp. This is to provide constructive criticism, because in the end I think we all want to see future seasons to be the best that they can possibly be, and I'm just here to pitch in my 2 cents about it. And if after all of this you still think Rhea is the best and I completely missed the point of her character, hey, all the power to you. Let me know your opinion about the show in the comments. What did you think of the show? What did you like? What did you dislike? And why? And oh, of course, who's your favorite character? If you liked this video, please consider subscribing to the Silly Billy channel and turning on that notification bell. This video took a lot of work, so I hope to get to entertain you for the time being. And if so, I hope to see you around more often. For example, by joining the Discord server. I'm pretty active on there as well, so if you want to have a chance to talk to me directly, then probably there is your best bet. Also, if you really like this video and want to show your support, please consider checking out the Buy Me a Coffee link in my description. But for now, I thank you for watching. This has been Silly Billy, and remember, OMG Rhea W, Slay Queen, Slay! Houdoe!